Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are tackling something that I honestly think is going to, well, change the way you walk through your day.
It really is a massive paradigm shift.
Yeah, and I know we say that a lot,
Yeah.
but usually we're talking about, productivity hacks or historical patterns. Today we are talking about the actual operating system of your reality.
It's a big one. We're essentially popping the hood on the human experience to see how the engine actually runs.
Right, because we usually like to think of ourselves as pretty logical creatures. I mean, I like to think I'm logical. I look at the world, I see facts, sky is blue, my bank account is, well, what it is. And I make decisions based on those facts.
Sure, the whole rational actor theory.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
But the research we are looking at today argues that is not actually how it works. Not even close.
It really isn't. And
Yeah.
that's the part that is slightly unsettling at first glance. The core premise here is that humans do not actually live by facts alone. We live by interpretation.
Which sounds a bit, philosophical, doesn't it? Like, oh, it's all about your perspective.
Yeah, people hear that and think of positive affirmations or something.
Right. But the breakdown in our sources today is way more mechanical than that. The claim isn't just that we have opinions. It's that the stories we tell ourselves about who we are, what the world is doing, those stories are actually more real than the physical events happening around us.
Exactly. And when we say more real, we aren't talking about a metaphor. We are talking about biological mechanism. This isn't about lying to ourselves. It's about how the brain functions. A story is not just a narrative. It is a literal lens.
So we are going to look at three main things today.
Yeah.
How these lenses shape our perception before we even understand an event. Then, the physical and behavioral feedback loops they create. And finally, how to rewrite them to regain power over our lives.
Let's start with that first one because it really sets up the whole concept. These stories shape perception before events are even fully understood.
Okay, let's pause and unpack that because that feels like a massive statement. Shaping perception before understanding. I feel like most of us assume our eyes work like a video camera.
Right, the camera model.
Yeah, the lens opens, the light comes in, the brain recorded the picture, and then we decide how we feel about it.
That is the common assumption. But biologically, that's just not accurate. The brain is described in the research as a predictive organ. It uses past experiences to construct meaning before the full evidence even arrives.
So it's not waiting for all the data.
Not at all. Think about it. Your brain is sitting in a dark, silent skull. It's receiving these noisy, chaotic electrical signals from your eyes and ears. If it had to process every single bit of raw data in real time before making a decision.
You would be completely paralyzed.
Exactly. It takes too much energy, so it takes shortcuts. It predicts. It paints the picture based on what it expects to see, based on your existing stories, and then just double checks the edges to make sure it's not walking into a wall.
So before I even consciously know what's happening, my brain has already decided what it means.
Precisely. We aren't passively recording reality, we are actively constructing it.
Can we get a concrete example of how this filter mechanism works? Because the sources gave some really specific and honestly kind of heavy examples of this.
Yeah, let's look at the I am not enough story. That's a very common one.
Oh, absolutely. A lot of us have a version of that running in the background.
If your internal story is I am not enough, the research shows that every neutral event will be filtered through a sense of deficiency.
Filter through deficiency.
Oh,
It's
no.
like wearing blue-tinted glasses. Everything looks blue, even a red apple.
Right. So let's say you're in a meeting. You're presenting an idea. Your boss glances at the clock on the wall.
Okay.
That is the raw data. Eyes move to clock. It is a completely neutral event. Maybe they have a dentist appointment. Maybe they're just checking how much time is left in the hour.
But if I'm wearing the I am not enough glasses,
You don't see a person checking the time. You see a confirmation of your worst fear. Your brain instantly predicts, oh, they're bored. I am losing them. I am failing.
wow.
The raw data was neutral, but the lived experience was deeply negative.
And the positive alternative mentioned in the text is such a stark contrast. If you swap that lens for a different story, let's say, I can learn and adapt, that same set of facts changes texture completely.
Same raw data. Boss looks at the clock.
Right, but now the interpretation is, okay, time is tight, I need to get to the point. A setback becomes just information rather than an attack on your identity.
Exactly. It's just data you can use to pivot.
And there was another example that I think hits home for anyone dating in the modern world, the story of people always leave.
That's a heavy one. If the lens is people always leave, ambiguous behavior is immediately interpreted as abandonment.
This is the unread text scenario, right? If a friend or a date doesn't text back for 3 hours, a person without that lens might just think they're busy.
But the person with the people always leave lens goes into full panic mode. They think, it's happening again, I did something wrong, they're ghosting me. By the time the person actually texts back saying they were just at a movie, the stress response is already fired.
So this influences literally everything. The text lists off what these stories dictate, and it's wild. What we notice, what we ignore, how we react, what we expect, and even what we believe is possible.
It governs your entire operational capacity, which leads directly into the idea of the self-fulfilling feedback loop.
Yes, let's transition to that, because when people hear self-fulfilling prophecies, it can start to sound a little, woo-woo.
Oh, for sure.
Like, just visualize a sports car and it will manifest in your driveway. But the source has clarified this isn't because reality magically bends to our will.
Not at all. We are talking about absolute mechanics here. It's behavioral science.
So how does the cycle actually work?
It's a three-step mechanism. First, we respond according to the story we are holding. Second, others respond to our behavior. And third, that external response reinforces the original story.
Let's walk through the detailed case study from the source regarding a person who believes they are unwanted. Because when I read this, it explains so many awkward social interactions I've witnessed, or let's be honest, been a part of.
It is a brilliant illustration. So start with the internal state. You have a person holding the belief, I am unwanted. Now, this isn't just a thought. The research emphasizes that this belief actively shapes their nervous system tone.
It's deeply physical. It affects posture, voice, timing, decision-making.
Yes. So purely as a defense mechanism, this person withdraws slightly. They slump their shoulders, they avoid eye contact, they speak quietly or hesitate to join the conversation.
They're trying to protect themselves from the rejection they believe is inevitable.
Exactly. But then step 2 happens, the external reaction. The other people in the room don't have access to this person's internal monologue. They just see the external behavior.
They just see someone who looks closed off or uninterested.
So they sense this distance, and naturally they back off. Connection weakens, they go talk to someone else who is making eye contact.
And then we hit step 3, the confirmation.
The person looks around the room, sees everyone ignoring them, and says, see, I knew it, I am unwanted.
The original story feels confirmed by the reality it actually helps create. That is genuinely tragic. Because the isolation is real. They really are alone in the corner. But it was manufactured by their own defense mechanism.
The story drives the behavior, and the behavior drives the result.
And they're usually totally unaware they are doing it. Which brings us to a crucial question. Are stories just inherently bad? Should we try to stop storytelling and just look at raw facts?
No, and that's an important point. Stories are not inherently false or bad. They are necessary attempts to organize our experience.
The brain craves order.
Right. We have to have a narrative to make sense of the chaos. The danger lies in unconscious storytelling.
When they go unexamined?
Yes. When stories are unexamined, they harden. They stop feeling like an interpretation and start feeling like an objective fact.
This is where we get into the danger of the invisible. The most powerful stories are often the ones we don't even notice because they just sound like the truth. The text mentions key phrases we use to lock these in.
Phrases like, that's just how it is, or the biggest one, that's just who I am.
I hear that all the time. Or, I'm just not good at public speaking. I'm just an anxious person.
That's just who I am, takes a narrative and turns it into an identity. But the research makes a crucial distinction here. Identity is partly narrative, and therefore narratives can evolve.
So if you see it as a story, you could edit it. But if you see it as fixed identity, you're stuck on autopilot.
Exactly.
So how do we stop the cycle? How do we regain agency? Because the source material provides a very specific set of questions for self-inquiry. And I want to make sure we give people these practical takeaways.
Yes, there is a 4-question checklist for regaining agency, and it starts with stepping out of the unconscious stream.
Okay, question number 1. What story am I telling right now?
Which is often the hardest step. You have to catch yourself in the moment of reaction and label the story as a story, not a fact. You have to say, okay, I'm telling myself that my friend is ignoring me because they hate me.
Right. Separate the event from your explanation of the event. Question 2. What evidence supports it?
We don't want to deny reality. Maybe your friend has been distant lately. You acknowledge the data points your brain is using so you aren't gaslighting yourself.
But then you have to ask question 3. What evidence challenges it?
This is where you force your brain to widen the lens. You actively look for the data you were previously ignoring. Maybe your friend also just started a highly stressful new job. Maybe they texted you something nice last week.
You're forcing yourself to look at the full picture. Which leads to question 4, which I found so fascinating. Is this story expanding or constricting me?
This moves away from simply trying to be right and asks about utility. Does believing the world is out to get me keep you safe, or does it just keep you isolated and constricted?
If it's making you smaller, more fearful, and defensive, it's a story worth rewriting. But we need to clarify what changing the story actually means.
Yes, absolutely.
Because the goal is not to deny reality or invent a fantasy. If my business is failing, I shouldn't just tell a story that everything is perfect and I'm a millionaire.
No, delusion is dangerous. The goal is accuracy. It's about aligning your narrative with reality as accurately as possible by updating your interpretations in light of fuller evidence.
It's moving from a panicked, narrow view to a wider, more accurate view.
And the result of doing this is that when stories are examined, they become flexible. When you can see the story you're telling, you suddenly gain choice.
And when you gain choice, you are no longer unconsciously living inside the story.
That is the ultimate goal.
So to summarize this whole journey we've been on today, we started by looking at how unconscious lenses distort reality before we even process it. Then we saw how those lenses create behavioral feedback loops that actually manifest the things we fear.
Right.
And finally, we looked at how making conscious choices to examine those narratives can actually align us with a much broader, more empowering reality.
The key takeaway is that the stories we make up are more real than we know, simply because they actively shape the world we end up experiencing.
It's huge. It really makes you realize that you aren't just passively watching your life happen. You are the author. Which leaves us with a final provocative thought to chew on.
Lay it on us.
If your current reality is being shaped by a story you wrote years ago, without even thinking about it, what actually happens when you decide to pick up the pen and consciously rewrite it? That is where the power lives.
I love that. It changes everything.
It really does. Thank you all for joining us on this deep dive. We will catch you next time.